Hello. I'm back again to stitch out more from our Let Freedom Ring brand new 3-block wall hanging design. So earlier we did Firework A, which I've got all finished up. Super cute, really easy block to stitch out. And now we are going to do our Firework B. So that's our center block right here. And it uses more of the stitch and flip technique, no applique in it. So we are going to hop right over to the machine and start stitching. So you can see here I already did a few steps ahead of time. I have my battleizer in the hoop again. That's our batting and stabilizer combination. So just one product to hoop here. I did skip step 2 again because I'm not using wool in this colorway of our 3-block wall hanging. If you want to use it, just make sure that you prepare it by just cutting it to size and then pressing the edges about 1/4 inch in on all sides. And then you can tack that down with a water-soluble thread. I did skip that step and I moved right on to step 3, which was to sew the placement stitching right onto the battleizer. You can see I did that here with a blue thread. You would want to use a water-soluble. And then I also did step 4, and you can still do step 4 with a water-soluble thread. That is just to tack down fabric A, and then you can use your hoop scissors to trim a scant 1/4 inch from the tack down stitching. So now we are jumping right into step 5. For step 5, we're going to use our Firework B fabric, and I'll place that right side down. The raw edges are approximately even with Firework A fabric. So I'll lay that down right here. Raw edges approximately even. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then in the needle, I have a neutral colored thread, and I'm going to sew the seam. Now I'll take my fabric and I will flip that right side up. I'm going to finger press and smooth out my fabric. And with that same thread in the needle, we'll sew the tack down. And before we move on to the next step, I'm going to trim my fabric about a scant 1/4 inch from that tack down stitching. You can use a pair of hoop scissors or hoop scissors mini for this. They have that nice offset handle, so it makes trimming in the hoop really easy. And I'll just trim a scant 1/4 inch from my tack down. Again, your trimming doesn't have to be perfect. One of the things that we love about quilting in the hoop. And this entire block is built with the stitch and flip method, which does come together really quick. So I love that for this design as well. So for step 7, I'm going to take that Firework B fabric again. I'll place it right side down. My raw edges are approximately even with Firework A fabric, and then we'll sew the seam with that same neutral colored thread in the needle. And then I'll take my fabric and flip it right side up, finger press and smooth out, and then keeping that same thread in the needle, we'll sew the tack down. And again, I'm going to trim a scant 1/4 inch from my tack down stitching. All right, and now we're going to switch the thread in the needle. I'm going to switch it to a thread that matches my Firework C fabric. And I'm going to use this fun blue fabric for this one. Get my needle threaded really quick, and then we'll place this fabric. Okay, so we'll take our Firework C fabric. We will lay that right side down, raw edges approximately even with Firework fabrics A and B, and then we're going to sew our seam. And we'll take our fabric, we got a long thread there. We'll take our fabric, flip it right side up, and same thing, finger press and smooth out, and then we can sew our tack down. And again, I'm going to use my hoop scissors or hoop scissors mini, and I'll trim a scant 1/4 inch away from our tack down stitching again. And you'll notice every time I'm trimming, I'm leaving my hoop on a hard, flat surface. I'm not placing it in my lap because I don't want to risk my design shifting in the hoop. And now we're on step 11 already. And for step 11, this is where we're going to start laying our background fabric down. So I'm going to place a neutral colored thread. I'm just going to go ahead and match my fabric even with a white thread. And for this particular block in this design, you should have a strip of background fabric. So we're going to use this strip to kind of build the rest of our block here. So I'll take this, I'm going to lay it right side down, raw edges approximately even, or for this one, I would even overlap a little bit because I'm using a white fabric and I have darker red fabric underneath. Since I don't want that dark red to show, I'm going to overlap a little on those raw edges, and then with that neutral colored thread, we'll sew the seam. And now we'll take our background fabric, turn that right side up, finger press and smooth out. And with the same thread, we'll sew the tack down. Notice I'm not trimming the fabric quite yet. Okay, so now that we have our fabric flipped right side up and tacked down, we're just going to trim about a scant 1/4 inch from our tack down fabric on the inside edge of our block. We are going to leave at least a 1/2 inch of excess fabric on this outside edge so that we have fabric in our seam allowance later when we trim and join our blocks. And the same process for step 13. So place your background fabric right side down. You can even overlap those raw edges a little bit again, and then sew your seam. And then take your fabric, turn it right side up, finger press and smooth out, and we'll sew the tack down. And then I'm going to trim this piece the same way as well. So a scant 1/4 inch from my tack down stitching on the inside edge of my block. And then I want at least a 1/2 inch of fabric on that outside edge. And we are going to continue this process. I think the stitch and flip technique goes all the way through step 19. So we'll just keep building our block. And you turn your fabric right side up, finger press, smooth out, and tack down. And again, you can rotate your hoop if you need to be able to trim your fabric. Just make sure that you are trimming on a hard, flat surface. Two more pieces of fabric to tack down here. So we'll lay it right side down. Raw edge is approximately even or the top overlapped a little bit, and then sew our seam. And then flip your fabric right side up. Finger press and smooth out. And tack down. And I'll trim my fabric the same way again. Is anyone stitching out Firework Block B while I stitch this out? Because I think you'll be amazed at how quickly we'll be done with this. So I'm on my last piece right now. Okay, now we are on step 20. So I am going to change the thread in my needle to a water-soluble thread because this step will tack down all the fabric on the outside edges of the block. And as it's tacking down, I'm going to make sure all my fabric is flipped right side up and smoothed out. And as it tacks down, I'll just kind of keep adjusting the fabric if I need to and making sure that it's laying nice and flat. Okay, so all of our fabric is on our block now. And now we can just do the fun part, which is add some quilting to it and make it look really cute. I'm going to trim this last strip of fabric off, leaving at least a 1/2 inch on that outside edge. And for step 21, you can just use a thread that coordinates with your Firework fabrics. Place that right in the needle and we'll sew some quilting right onto our Firework. See if I can get my needle threaded, man. It's giving me a hard time. And sometimes the needle threader gives me a hard time too, so that's why I do this. Alrighty. Okay, and now we are on step 22. We just have 3 more steps left. And for step 22, we're going to place a thread that matches our background fabric in the needle. And this step will sew some of that really fun firework quilting. All right, and while that's stitching, here is our firework C block. So you can see some of that fun background quilting. Same steps to make this firework as well. This firework's a little bit bigger than the other one, and this block also has kind of the fuse of the firework on it. Really cute, really fun quilting in the background. That's what it's stitching right now. And when we're done with this block, we will really quickly show you also how to do one of the border blocks, which is really simple. Just one piece of fabric for that one and some really cute firework embroidery. And now I'll just kind of outline that firework with this thread, and then we move on to the last 2 steps. All right, so 2 more little steps to finish up this block. And for step, what are we on? 23, you can use a thread that just coordinates with your fabric. So I'm just using a blue thread. And this will sew some detail. Okay, last step, same thing. So just a thread that coordinates with your Firework fabric. So now I'm going back to my royal blue thread for this one. This is the same thread that I used for part of the Firework in block A. Trim my thread. Alrighty, so this is our Firework B block. Now what we're gonna do, now that this one's done, I'm not gonna trim it quite yet. We're gonna move right into our border block. So let me get set up for that real quickly. And that block is really simple, really easy to make, and it's small enough that most of you could probably put 2, maybe even more in one hoop, so you can stitch those blocks out pretty quickly. Go ahead and put my water-soluble thread in the needle, and we're going to be stitching the top block. And as always, I have our battleizer in the hoop right here, and that's our batting and stabilizer combination. So just one thing that you have to hoop. You don't have to hoop a stabilizer and a battleizer, or a stabilizer and a batting, just the battleizer. Don't ask me to say it wrong. I say battleizer a lot, so I'm tempted to say that. Okay, so I've got that in my hoop. I've got our top border block pulled up on my machine and a water-soluble thread in our needle, and I will sew the placement stitch. Okay, and step 2 is our optional step. You can add wool batting if you like that extra loft and dimension. I'm going to skip that for this demonstration. And so now I'll just take our border fabric. I'm going to align that over the placement stitch. Just peek underneath each edge to make sure it's centered nicely. And then with the water-soluble thread still in the needle, you can tack this down. And there's 2 more steps left in our border blocks. And I should say the exception to the border blocks for these particular steps would be that bottom border block. It just has a couple more steps to finish off the fuse from that Firework C block. So for step 4, I have a thread in there. You can use a thread that matches your background fabric or your border fabric. I'm going to stick with my thread that matches my background fabric, so just a white thread, and we'll sew the quilting. And again, if you're stitching these border blocks out, these are the perfect blocks. So for instance, this would be a perfect block to do the top border block as well as the bottom border block in one hoop. You can stitch them out a little quicker that way. Okay, I'm going to trim up some threads, and then there's just one more step to this block. This last step sews the firework embroidery on the border block. You can use the same thread that you just stitched the quilting with, which is what I'm going to do, or you can use a thread that contrasts your border fabric so it shows up nice. So we'll just stitch this embroidery now. Alrighty, and here is our border block. Here's our border block, and then we also stitched out the firework bee block. Quick and easy to stitch out. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to hold off on trimming these. We'll come back and we will trim these and we will show you how to assemble all your blocks together. We'll show you an awesome pinning technique, as well as exactly where to stitch, how to stitch these together, and talk about pressing if you're using wool or not. So join us for that video. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.